I'm sorry to the person I am actually making this video for, because this is a student request. I'm talking to two of us in our library about our thoughts on writing, and my coworker in public services is filling her side out. And he said because my schedule is crammed with this exciting training this week that I could do a video. But I feel like I've been putting it out late and I don't want to screw up your assignment. Because I keep getting home and I am like exhausted. So we're going to try and knock out a quick little recording for you, and hopefully this answers enough of your questions. You can knock out your little paper comparing us. Because again, we thought it'd be interesting. One of us is in public services, one of us is in tech services, we're at very different ends of the career spectrum in terms of age, so it could be very interesting. All right, so yeah, same name as my legal name, just have at that. What made you choose librarianship? Not going to go into the whole long lecture of everything I failed at before I got here, but short answer, I failed upward. I originally went to graduate school for archives and historical stuff, and I wanted to do digitization, and that didn't work out just because of the economy at the time. So I ended up, I love doing descriptions, so I ended up in metadata and ended up at a community college. And the other fun thing that you probably don't know, most people don't know unless you're a librarian, is if you start working in academic libraries, it's very hard to get a job as a public librarian. Vice versa, not so much. But I interviewed at a lot of public libraries when I graduated from library school, and, well, part of it was probably my answers. I remember one where they were like, what would you do if some punk kids were, intimidating the older people in front of the building? And I'm like, I don't know, go out and try to befriend them. I was one of those punk kids. Clearly I don't have the right mindset, right? So, yeah, every interview I went on to a public library, in which I would have been glad to work in. No dice. But we have hired, I've been in many academic institutions where they hire public librarians, and it's totally fine. Apparently the public librarians think we can't handle the true public in all of its interesting glory. Some of us worked retail, so don't worry, we know what we're into. All right, so that kind of answers your question one and question two. I wanted to be a public librarian. At one point I thought I wanted to be a school librarian, but again, now that I'm older and getting tired, I'm glad we haven't had kids. All right, so types of writing. So for your class, I know you're looking at the public-facing side of our writing, so you're looking at like research guides, and I think you also said newsletters. I've done a newsletter for one of my liaison areas, but the joy of being in tech services is most of my writing is technical. So we do a lot of documentation, we do a lot of manuals, I make a lot of super exciting videos to show people how things work or don't work and offer, reasoning as to why. I'm trying to think what else I write. Oh, I write articles. You can go look up my name and find all my exciting published stuff. The only thing I'd recommend you actually look at, might be the conference summaries, because those are like the only thing I do regularly. I used to do more of that, but again, now that we found YouTube, what the heck, I just broadcast for myself, and if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. All right. Anyway, so yeah, I do some of the research guides for my liaison areas, but I don't do nearly as much of that as I do technical documentation, and also just a lot of writing up descriptions of how things are broken, which requires a lot more thought and precision than you might realize, especially when you're communicating with people who are overseas and the software is different. And yeah, I spend a lot of time, keep joking, my job is that one from Office Space that the guy's ranting about, like, I talk to the customer so the engineer doesn't have to, and it's like, I talk to the librarian so that the vendor doesn't have to, and I try to interpret both, and sometimes I feel this is just my job as a hander between ticket systems, but that's fine. So yeah, I think we went over this a little bit. Most frequent, least frequent. Probably the least frequent would be the scholarly stuff. So I do have like actual full articles in addition to the conference presentation summaries and stuff. So those take the longest. I have dyslexia and ADHD. Writing is definitely like a challenge. There's a lot of like strapping myself into the seat and forcing myself to be clear of distractions, and like, yeah. So it's always been painful. It's a little bit better with the AI technology, because at least it can restructure my sentences for me, because my natural way of writing sentences is like the inverse of English. I did not learn that until I took French class in high school, and they're like, oh, well, your brain is just programmed for French. Yeah, this is the joy of being born in the late 20th century when they just didn't look for diagnoses. They're just like, yeah, you're just weird. It's fine. And to some degree that was better and more freeing, and to another degree you're like, but why? Why is my brain function differently? So I do write for different audiences. So I did talk to one of my coworkers about this, and it's like, well, it's kind of the same for us, because in tech you need to make things very, very clear. The only difference I really have is trying to like avoid library terms when writing for a more general audience, and that I admit is hard. So we do that a lot with like website design. I help with Smart Search, so I spend a lot of time asking for input on labels. I'm like, what do we call interlibrary loan? Which librarians know is where you get books and things from other libraries, but it definitely is not transparent, easy to understand if you're not a library person. So spend a lot of time on that. I also spend a lot of time on making sure I vary like word sentence structure, order, not using the same nouns and adverbs too much. Yeah. Okay, so sweet side note for those of you who watch the channel regularly. One of my failures, which is one of the early reasons why I ended up in this profession, is because I didn't discover how bad my writing was until I ended up at U of M in the honors program taking English courses and was getting C's. Apparently my professor just let me slide in high school. They're like, oh, whatever, your sentence structure is all bogus, and you don't know commas, you don't know splices, you split infinitives, whatever, it's fine. Go into an actual English program, and it's like, no, it's not fine, you need to get your stuff together. Fortunately, social science, very forgiving. And there's writing centers to help you, which did help me, although I'll admit I didn't take advantage of that until my senior year. So if you're struggling, please take advantage of that now. We have that, and ours is excellent. Okay. I think I addressed that. So what kind of research do I do? Don't think I actively really do. I don't know if you're asking about like what articles you read. So we get fed a lot of journal articles. I don't necessarily keep up with the stuff my public services colleagues do, so I do miss out on a lot of stuff because I'm no longer part of like the academic library association. Yeah, again, I'm in more of the tech organization, so I don't get to see as much of that stuff. And it's like, oh, pedagogy changes. Oh, we've decided to change the standard. Okay. What does that mean for me? I don't know. Anyway, that's the nice thing about working here. We all just kind of do our own thing. All right. So yeah, I get fed a lot of stuff. I subscribe to journals. We have the wonderful browsing, which I highly recommend. If you go and look up a journal and you discover you like it, you can make a little account on our browsing, and then it'll just send you emails whenever you get new journal issues. That is the bee's knees. The one thing, because I am older, I'm going to say that I don't like. Even as an e-resources person, I kind of hate that we went and totally dropped physical publishing in the library realm. Because with the physical journal, I feel like I was, well, not forced. I felt like I was obligated to read every article in it, even if it took me a while, because, no offense, some of those, Alex, yeah, they're very dry sometimes, especially metadata. But at least when I had the physical thing, I'm like, okay, we'll get through this article, and then we'll do this one next week or something. Whereas when I get the digital now, it's just like, nope, none of that applies to me, so we'll just skip that. And I've learned a lot of interesting things in journals that I read for, articles I wouldn't necessarily pick up if it's just digital and I'm, trying to make time for it. So as my one critique about digital versus physical publishing, and I did try to fight it when the American Library Association, so I'm like, we can't afford to keep printing. And I'm like, I'll pay extra. Just please maintain my print subscription. All right. You finally were taught anything you were taught in graduate school as directly translated to the profession. Oh man, not really, because again, I went to graduate school for a different discipline, and in archives, the way we describe things is very different because it has to do with like relationships to organizations and entities and things like that. Whereas library description is different because it's like item level. And I used to get in fights when I was working in archives jobs shortly after graduate school because I used to be more focused on item level because I had just come out of a special collections job where I was doing rare books. And, I'm also one of those people that was arguing against this whole more product, less process concept, where we just didn't do stuff. We're like, we're just not going to remove paper clips and, staples anymore. And we're not going to describe anything beyond the folder level, And I'm like, that doesn't make things discoverable. Yes, we have a backlog, but put in the work, people. Hire more people. Cultural heritage is important. Anyway. So yeah, I was taught how to do that, and when I finally discovered, while working in the Rare Books Library, because I had gone in there again as an archive student, that I wanted to do bibliographic description, that sort of thing, it was too late in my program for me to actually get in the one library course from the library side of the program that would have taught me that. And I really regret that because I was told that it was kind of a weeder course because the instructor was really, really strict. And for those of you that know nothing about cataloging, our field used to be like very obsessed, and it still kind of is, with like the ISBD style of punctuation and things being abbreviated and not being abbreviated. And when I first started to learn to catalog, you had to like learn to memorize all this and cross-reference big manuals. And it does eventually become second nature. But yeah, doing it the first few times is definitely very rough. And I would have appreciated a class on that. I didn't get, again, most of the traditional library classes in graduate school. So I didn't get like how to do a reference interview. I didn't get how to do like normal collection development. I did take a class. We like worked with the Internet Public Library, and our team made the podcast collection, which was pretty cool. But yeah, most of what I did in graduate school unfortunately doesn't apply. And then there's a lot of stuff you learn on the job, which you're like, oh geez, they never covered any of this exciting stuff. And yeah, that's the other reason why I'm hoping to maintain a YouTube channel, because there are some things I would like to discuss that we just either for, I don't know, I don't want to say vocational law, but yeah, there's a lot of topics that we just do not bring up in library school. You're like, wait, that's an issue? And you're like, oh, yes. Maybe we're getting better about that now. I graduated, oh my God, I'm so old. I graduated in '09. And that was the other reason, like, why my career, like, path went really wild. Because, like, I'm like, I can't move out of Michigan because I have nowhere I can afford to be. And, because of that, I can only drive so far, and because of that, I can only apply to these kinds of jobs, and then you also have the issue of being like overqualified once you're out there being an assistant for so long. You know, that's your first graduate jobs, assistantships, and then they move you up. Anyway, I have all sorts of exciting story times about my past jobs that we can get into. Maybe someday I'll make a zine, but I'm thinking of making issue 2 of Adventures, Adventures in Leadership 2, but we'll see. Anyway, it's under 15 minutes, but I think I answered all of your questions. Feel free to leave a comment if I didn't, sir. And hopefully this helps you write your paper. And hopefully for the rest of you on YouTube, this gives you some idea of what it's like writing in technical services.